New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, Paul Spain here, and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. Great today to have Shona Grundy joining the show. How are you, Shona?
I'm good, thanks, Paul. How are you?
Great. It's been ages since we caught up, so a privilege to be able to, sit down, hang out, and catch up and chat about what's been happening in the world of tech. But maybe we can start with a little intro about where you fit into this big world of tech these days.
Yeah, sure. So I actually come from a whole line of industries. I started off in the music industry in the UK 6 years ago, into film and television when I returned. MP3s were taking over the world, and I tried to get back into music when I returned to New Zealand, and everybody was losing their jobs and losing their minds over technology rolling in. So I got into film and television, which was booming with Peter Jackson and Richard Taylor's work. So always grateful to what they've done for our industry. Was in that for a while, got into animation, really enjoyed animation and building games. And it was just sort of slowly evolving where
That was what you were doing last time we talked.
it was, trigger happy. So
Yeah.
it actually evolved into my first ever technology company. I was just kind of on this rote wheel of creating content and trying to release it and pitching in TV shows. And we were writing children's books and all sorts of things to try and build our IP. And my brother, who was my co-founder of the animation company, he was an animator at the time, he taught himself how to code C++, I think. It was crazy. And he said, oh, look at this iPad. I think it was 2010. Look at this iPad. How cool is this? And I think I can allow anyone to be able to create their own cartoons. And at the time when we were trying to train up people, it was 3 years to be a really bad entry-level animator. And he showed me within 30 seconds how anyone could make their own cartoon. And I was just kind of sick of the rat wheel. I didn't really know technology, but this was in 2010. And I just looked at him and I said, we're doing that or nothing. I'm over it. And that's how I got into technology. So I started building this company, and I would attend job interviews, and there'll be engineers sitting there and they'll just be talking. And honestly, it just was like, I have no idea what you're saying, until one day it just kind of started landing in. And built this really amazing technology company. We won high-tech awards, innovation awards, raised rounds of funds, did licensing deals with big Hollywood studios. It was incredible. We were told we could not do it. And the more people told us we couldn't, the more we just came up with ideas to get around the you cannot. And then, so since then I've gone and worked in machine learning, Soul Machines, Movio, Datacom, and I'm currently the chief operating officer at a biotechnology company called Exocule. And I'm a high-tech awards judge as well. Yeah, a few things.
That's fantastic. That's great. Well, let's jump in. We'll start with some of the things that have been going on in the tech world, and then I'm really keen to hear a bit more about the things that you're doing at the moment and the challenges that you're solving and so on. So, but first up, we've had news about Spotify and launching a new podcasting feature, but launching it in New Zealand. So it was something that was tweeted by Spotify's NZ Twitter handle. I haven't seen anything to say that it's going any further than NZ yet, but they've put up quite a fancy video, and it's kind of really, this looks like a very slick and easy way to be able to produce your own, capture your own conversations in a way. I think, what was the example used before we started the show?
Like Canva, right? So anything that is trying to take down the barriers between technology and the general consumer on things that we know they already like to do is a no-brainer, right? You're just like, how do we get technology to engage with the consumer more deeply on things that they care about? So I actually just saw this because of what you sent through to me, and I was like, oh wow, that's awesome. People are already blogging. And so imagine turning that blog into a podcast, because we know people love to consume podcasts. That's why we're here today. But yeah, look what Canva did. It was PowerPoints and
Photoshop
Photoshop,
stuff.
and boom, Canva.
Now
If you haven't
anyone
used
can do it.
Canva, it's a cool piece of kit. Canva is, yeah.
And
yeah.
there's obviously it sparked a whole lot of variations and others sort of come into that space. But I mean, Canva in itself, it's a little bit of a pity it's an Australian company. 'Cause they've done.
I know wonderful New Zealanders working for them too.
They've done incredibly
awesome.
well.
Mm.
And so it's great to see these things. I am always very curious when New Zealand sort of gets to test out technology ahead of other parts of the world. I think that's can be pretty handy that we get picked on in that way.
Yeah, we're perfect, aren't we? We're the perfect test market.
There's a lot to like about picking the New Zealand, picking New Zealand, our size and scale, and all sorts of things from an adoption perspective. So it's a good way to go.
Yeah, I love getting the new tech first. Yeah, we always get the new emoticons first too. Hooray!
So I thought that was interesting, and basically you can record content through your Spotify app. I haven't actually had a look and had a play with it as yet. I'm not sure I actually saw the option when I had a look at Spotify the other day, so I'll have to have a look. The other one, and you talked about blogging and turning that into podcasts, and there's now a bit of a partnership going on with between Automatic, who do WordPress, and I think that's with Spotify as well, where basically you can convert blog posts into podcasts, and I think where they're AI.
Well, this makes perfect sense then, doesn't it?
Read and so on. So there's constant change and innovation, right? It keeps happening. Now I'm not sure which of these things ends up sort of becoming the big hit, because sometimes we do stuff because it can be done or it looks like a good idea, but of course not all of it actually gains enough traction to have a permanent place and
I think it's got to solve a problem, right? Like, what is the actual problem we're solving? Because we've got so much to choose from in terms of where do we spend our time.
Yep.
Therefore, it's the problem solvers really win.
Yeah, and how well you solve the problem plays out of it, doesn't it? So all right. Now the other one from a local perspective that we had was seemed to be quite a bit of coverage of this new foundation that has been started up by the non-fungible labs folks, and I've got to say, Brooke Howard Smith and the whole team, they are so incredibly well networked, and they're doing some really really interesting stuff on their NFT front. But the people that they connect in and collaborate with, I think is pretty mind-blowing. And so this announcement that I sort of whole lot of media were picking up on last week was their launch of what they're calling the Futureverse Foundation, and they're I guess funding it off the back of their NFTs, and they've donated a whole lot to be able to fund it. But they were I guess, getting this attention because of the involvement of Alexandra Grant and her partner Keanu Reeves, who is a rather well-known character. Certainly for those of my generation. We were talking about it with our team the other day, and I realised probably a lot of people in the room who may not know who Keanu Reeves is if you're
Oh,
younger,
that's true.
because we haven't, he
Yeah.
hasn't been in too many movies in the last few years, but 20 years ago with The Matrix and Point Break and however many other movies, it was really, really well known.
Yeah. What I really like about Keanu getting involved is we also know you hear stories about what an amazing human being he is, right? He's a huge philanthropist. He
Yes.
gives back. He doesn't want any attention or acclaim for it. He does it because he cares. And I think he's a wonderful human being. And so for him to get involved in this, I absolutely know, because from my music industry days and then the work I was doing with Soul Machines and working with celebrities there, is that people know they get tapped on the shoulder all day, every day to endorse things. And so for him to get involved in this, that he's done his due diligence. That it has value for him beyond himself. He always looks for existential things to contribute towards the world.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge endorsement factor for me. But I think people are really confused about what NFTs are, and it's a little, I think it's a little bit frustrating, but it's also no surprise why Keanu's ended up getting involved. He's an artist, and NFTs will play a really important part in how we share data. It's a huge shift change, and if people don't understand currently, I think they're just like, oh, it's a strange little thing where people put up a piece of artwork and they sell it for $500 online, and then what do you do with it? And it's like, no, that's not what that is. This is a use case of NFTs that we're currently seeing, and we're at the very start of its evolution. And I kind of liken it to when I was in the music industry. And, because NFTs, if you want to know what NFTs are, and I think most people do want to know what they are a new file format with smart contracts. It's that simple. It's not a piece of artwork that people are selling. That's a use case. So let's not get that confused. So I liken it to when MP3s came along for the music industry.
Yeah.
It was in 2000. And I was much younger, and we were there was terrible piracy going on, and the entire music industry was just like, just make it illegal to use them. Tell them they can't use it. Arrest people at the border for having it on a CD.
Yeah.
Awesome. And us younger kids were like, what are you talking about? This is technology. It's arrived. People want to use it. Don't tell them they can't use it, because quite frankly, we will. We're in our 20s. We're like, don't tell us we can't use it. But how do we help them use it smartly and for us? And then along came iTunes. The record companies crumbled, and you don't hear about Universal Records or Polygram or Polydor anymore. They're gone. But what happened was we ended up with iTunes and Spotify and wonderful things that people embraced, and the same with the MPEGs for the film industry. So 7 years later, same problem. Tell them they can't use it. Tell them they can't do it. Netflix comes. And here we are with NFTs, and I see it's a new file format with smart contracts. And what does that mean? Currently in a licensing scenario, if you're an artist, or actually you can use this for anything. I've seen it being used for like supply chains and distribution for shipping. But if you are someone who has a copyright of something, you've created something, and currently all you can do is hire a lawyer, and you have a licensing deal, and it's contracted, and it costs you thousands of dollars, and it's done business to business, and that's how licensing is done. But what NFTs do is they allow a business to license to a direct consumer their thing, and it can travel with them, and that owner can continue to make money off of it as a license, or as a general consumer, I can make something and I can license it to you, Paul, and forever I will earn royalties upon that for my life. And so when you understand what it is, it's a no-brainer that Keanu's involved. He's like, well, artists are suffering right now and they can't track their digital media, and they can't continue to earn, yet they made it, they created it, so I think it's wonderful, and I NFTs are here to stay, and if you don't understand that, you're just going to be behind. So
Well, it's an interesting field because I think technology's come along, and we probably each make our choice around, well, what's going to happen with this thing? Is it how's it going to play out? And depending on all sorts of factors, some will go, I'm going to stand back on this, or look, I can see that because it relates to me. I've been talking to a friend in the US who he had some quite notable success in music some years ago, and he has seen an opportunity where NFT type technology could be applied to sort of bring that next wave of innovation. And we see, so we look at, say, Spotify today, and then you look at what a musician earns when their music is, they're making their money off their music from Spotify plays and so on, and it's such a minuscule amount. And so there's a bunch of new ideas coming, and I think once people can see how the technology might relate to them, that's when they flip. And it was interesting with Keanu. I saw this video interview with him. It was like, I don't know, 6 months ago, whenever the new Matrix movie was about to come out, and there must have been some NFTs getting made in relation to the movie, and he got asked about it, and it was just a bit of laughter, and that was it. I think.
What is that crazy thing? Yeah.
But then once you see how this can apply, that's I think that's where it changed. Now, I'm always encouraging people to look at the new technologies, and the best way to look is to actually experience them. Doesn't mean you have to drop in a whole lot of money, but if you can try out the technology, then that's part of that, helping you understand it and how it might relate to you or your world. So I think that's an important part in the process. I do think with NFTs that we still have a range of challenges around crypto, NFTs. There's a lot of cybersecurity type scenarios and challenges, and the idea of sort of being your own bank, as we're told, is sort of what it's like when you're dealing with crypto. Well, hey, my bank actually takes care of some security and things that I don't have to think about. And so there's some maturing to go on, but that's part of the journey. And the more of these sorts of things that we delve into and have a look at, oh yeah, that's a good use case, and those things come together. The more we can see the dots, the dots joining up. But there are some things I think where it's a blockchain, the flag's been waved, oh, blockchain's going to solve all these issues, and some of those things are like, well, actually the particular thing you're trying to do there, you don't need a blockchain database. You can that's it's like you're trying to coat your idea in the latest and greatest thing
blockchain
to make it look like the coolest latest thing, right? And we see that sort of stuff happen time and time again too, don't we?
Yeah, you do. And just like with the first iteration of the website, there were poor use cases, bad players, bad security, but then we got Amazon out of it, right?
Mm,
Like it's always technology are tools. It's the human beings who put in the use cases and how we apply and how we come up with our ideas and learn from the past. And if you kind of just open your mind to that, you're like, okay, so there's a new file format with smart contracts. Oh my God, what could I do with that? Because if you start thinking about, so what requires a contract? Everything. It's mind-blowing when you start thinking of it like that. You can apply it to any industry.
Yeah, I think there's a whole lot of opportunities ahead, and what's exciting is that we've got a lot of activity happening here in New Zealand that sees us in a very
We're
very
totally
strong
leading it.
position,
Mhm.
and generated a lot. You look at it from a export revenue perspective and so on. We've done
We are world leaders, those
very,
guys down
very,
at
very,
Centrality.
very
Mhm.
well, and I don't see that sort of stopping anytime soon. I think there's definitely the what are they calling it, the crypto winter. There's some there's some interesting times going on as far as cryptocurrencies are concerned, but I don't think that impacts or cancels the long-term opportunities that we see with NFTs. So yeah.
Interesting space.
Now, a few other topics we wanted to cover before we delve in a little bit more into what's happening in your world. Just a few little news bits and pieces. Saw that Polestar, who I see sort of Polestar as maybe not sitting in quite the same place as Tesla from how they are able to control their product, but they're effectively a new car brand. They're iterating with a range of vehicles, but the Polestar 2 is what's available in New Zealand currently. And really enjoyed driving the vehicle. I like the fact that it's got a, what do they call it, Android automotive operating system. So you've got this whole thing that's got speech recognition from a company that's actually pretty good at that stuff,
They're
because
not
that
bad.
can vary a lot in the vehicles.
They are the best. Yeah.
You've got that aspect that an application developed for Android, which is if there's going to be an application for something, it's usually going to be on iOS and Android. It can be usually reasonably quickly reshaped and then able to be published for use in that Android automotive experience. So, for instance, my favorite podcast app called Pocket Casts, that's available in the Play Store for Android automotive. Now, at the moment, last time I looked, it was a pretty small catalog. But their new thing is Apple CarPlay coming out through an over-the-air software update to run in those vehicles. Now, I'm used to that happening in Tesla all the time. We've always got new things, Netflix and games and all manner of things. But to see more and more automakers start to do updates that aren't just, when you go into your Mercedes dealer or whatever, and they've got a CD and they're going to load in the 2022 version of your maps or something, right? Like, this is what we're kind of used to with cars. It's been absolutely shocking.
Yeah.
So seeing the actual over the air updates happen and bring significant improvement or change to a vehicle is like, yes, where the industry is definitely starting to speed up and become more of a adopting the things that we expect from software firms and tech startups, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah. Starting to use the cloud, right, for the good of the consumer.
Yeah.
So which is great. And the good of the planet too, right? Maybe they're all starting to learn that we don't want to throw things away. We would like it to be upgraded. Do I have to put it into the junkyard or can I just upgrade my car? And can you make it last longer so that it does survive? And all those things that I think a lot of people are attracted to Tesla for. It's like, oh, my car my car keeps updating itself. How fabulous. And now others are learning that this is a really great feature, and long may it continue.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an industry that hasn't been geared very well in that way, and it is taking time to change, but it's changing, so that's good. So, and if you've got a Polestar too, then and you've got an iPhone, you'll be feeling it probably a lot happier. Now we talked about this before we started. The Google engineer who decided to interact with their artificial intelligent chatbot, this Lambda tech, as they call it, and started believing that it had become sentient.
Yeah.
This is quite an
It's a leap.
interesting scenario. Like,
I mean,
if this can happen once in a lab, we've for years we've sort of talked about technology that can convince you that it's human, but for an actual engineer to think that this AI,
yeah, I mean, that's called, maybe it's called burnout. Like, this is kind of where I am. I mean, having worked at Soul Machines, where we're developing these artificial humans
Yeah.
with dialogue flow and Watson, we use different systems in the back end, and I play around a lot with GPT-3, and
cool.
that's fabulous, but it doesn't really, you have to build in that soul to it. It's not there yet. Like, I would say, decades away from having. I would have thought an engineer coming out and saying, "Oh my God, it's alive! It has feelings and emotions."
Yeah.
But other than I worry about him. That's all I can perhaps offer to that.
There may be some interesting lessons in there that I don't know, psychologists and others will be studying for future, and how do we prepare people to be able to handle these interactions and
There's huge ethical considerations for us, and wherever, I mean, he could turn around and prove us all wrong in a couple of years' time and go, "I told you so." But I don't believe, from what I've experienced, that we're there yet.
We're not at the point of Terminator and
consciousness. I wouldn't say so.
Okay, that's good. The other topic that caught my attention was news about scientists developing what is being referred to as a living human skin for robotic fingers.
So, I mean, they're saying that it's waterproof and it can self-heal, which is pretty amazing, but it doesn't have like wrinkles and textures. I mean, the first thing I would want to ask those people who are behind this and spending all that money is, I don't understand the mission. Why? Like, if what's the problem they're trying to solve? Is it that they want to make robots look like humans? Therefore, should we be asking ourselves why and what's the problem you're trying to solve? And is that ethical to make a robot look like a human? Like, we should be very clear as to what's a human, what's not, as we develop this technology. But they might go, "Oh, no, this is, we're building this technology for burns units and skin grafting." And I'll go, "Okay, problem, awesome, I love it." But other than that, I do question the mission and the purpose of this. And when we've got so many other more problems to solve, I'm trying to figure out what one is.
Well, yeah, and I'm not quite sure where they're expecting to use this technology, but I mean, definitely the idea that we make robots that can work with moisture and water and so on, so that waterproof element is something that's I'm sure important. We get used to it very quickly when tech suddenly becomes a lot more useful because it can cope with these environments like our phones. It's kind of hard to recall how, and it's probably only been 5 to 7 years since the first sort of, mainstream, phones were waterproof, but now it's kind of just the norm. Well, semi-waterproof.
Yeah.
There's
And if they paint the
limits and
robot
so on.
gold, don't know where they might get that idea from, but maybe they might paint the robot gold, and then we're very clear it's not a human, it is a robot, and that could be okay.
Yeah, fair enough. So yeah, I mean, these things are we are important that we get it right. And the last bit of news that caught my attention was around creating technology to create well, not so much the technology, sort of how it's being used, but digital twins of humans. And you had some pretty interesting thoughts on this, and you were saying that this has already been done here in New Zealand, Auckland University. In this particular story that was, I think, in New Scientist and a couple of health publications, they were highlighting using a digital twin to help, in this case, address type 2 diabetes. But this idea that you could actually try out different, treatments on a digital twin, kind of a digital version of a human, to test out what might happen with different treatments. That seems to hold a lot of promise if you can create a digital twin that responds in a accurate manner, I suppose, which is probably the big challenge, I would think.
Yeah. I mean, and this was probably more to my point about the problems, right? Like, we have some big problems to solve, and this is an exceptional application of applying, our minds and brains and technology to some great problems. I have heard of the, I think it's the bioengineering department at Auckland University. They've got several digital twins now, I believe. They're trying to solve some big problems to do with lung cancer, and I can't remember the other ones, but digital twin usage is very common in the last sort of 6 or 7 years. It's kind of starting to evolve. So to have these results of it solving type 2 diabetes, I think, with some machine learning.
Bringing the highest reported rate of remission, of type 2 diabetes to date. And yeah, look, if you can use artificial intelligence and a digital twin to test this stuff out, rather than actually having to wait days, months, years, decades sometimes, right, to get those real world results of testing on people, whatever level of possibility that is. That sounds like it's pretty exciting.
I mean, it's the perfect use case of machine learning, right? So human beings can only computate so much data at a time. And we have a lot of data on human beings. Like, if you think about all the samples and testing and everything that we have from all the laboratory work that we do on our bodies, but where does that data sit? And that's kind of become the problem of sort of our last generation of computers. We built all these computers, we did testing, we've got data, we've got all this data sitting there and these big pools of it. And this is where AI comes in, or should come in. It's like, how do we then compute that data to make sense of that data and learn from that data in ways that we can actually solve problems at scale and at speed? And so this is a perfect use case of it. I do know that they're kind of at the, I think, thousands of data points, and they kind of need to get to those billions or trillions probably to solve human anatomy problems, because our bodies are so complex and there's so many anomalies to solve. Like, every human is so different, but it's really encouraging, and I think it's a wonderful use case.
Yeah, and look, I think the machine learning opportunity, as you know, there's more wearables and other things
Mm.
that can collect data. I mean, we're still not in a position, you know, where the doctor, you know, your general practitioner is getting hold of you or your device and so on, and it's saying, hey, you know, it appears based on the data, you know, you need to eat more veggies, go for a run more. I mean, we could probably say all of those things for most of us, but you know, accurately kind of, you know, drawing on big pools of data and using the wearables and machine learning to come to conclusions. And I see, you know, from one perspective, it's, well, you know, who wants to participate in that? But there's probably enough people with wearable devices that would be happy for, you know, anonymous data collection. And, you know, I guess you've got to kind of link that up maybe with your actual medical records. But if you linked up, you know, the data that's coming from, you know, a, you know, a few mainstream wearables,
Mm.
you know, probably notably what Google and Apple have between, you know, Fitbit and Apple, what huge amount of data. And if you could then line that up with, you know, what people are getting diagnosed with, and then, you know, you could probably predict a whole, you know,
So much.
ton of stuff. But we're
Yeah.
kind of we're not there, and I guess there's some reasoning for that. But you know, I think the earlier you catch this thing, and that's what, you know, generally the health sector seems to be wanting to do, is to move to a position where we away from the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff to actually let's prevent bad things from happening, and let's pick up those signals early and address them. But yeah, it seems like we've actually got the technology building blocks to do most of this, but it's just
Yeah.
not really happening yet, right?
And well, I mean, these are just like the first pilot use cases, right? Like, how do we then take all the, get more data in? To your point, we've got all these wearables. I know of a New Zealand tech company, Elementary, who have a device that goes over the abdomen. Your internal digestive system is a hugely complex beast, and they're trying to be able to diagnose you from externally. And I was a chronic patient. I had a chronic disease for my digestive system, and I had to, in the end, have about 4 operations over a year. I was chronically ill, almost died, and they had to do surgery on me, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you put this device over you, and you can actually diagnose someone from the outside. I think where they're trying to take this, and the vision is one day, is that there'll be a Paul Spain digital twin, there'll be a Shona Grundy one. I have my digital twin, instead of this data sitting as written text on your doctors, they can pull up your digital twin. You've been contributing data to it from all sorts of, here's my blood test, it's in my digital twin.
Yeah.
Here's my Fitbit, it's on my digital twin. My doctor doesn't have to kind of ask you questions about, how many units of alcohol you had this week. It's like, it's pretty clear, actually. But that's where we see we're going, and we have to start somewhere. And I think, this is a great start, and it'd be fabulous if the government's invested more money in this area.
Yeah. I guess there could be a bit of manipulation to some of this data. It's measuring certain things. Oh, I left my watch at home last night. That wasn't
could pose all
measuring
sorts
it
of
while I
insurance
was out.
things.
And,
You're like, I don't smoke cigarettes at all.
Yeah.
You can't lie in your insurance form. Mm.
Yes. Oh, well, we definitely have some exciting times ahead.
Mm.
But there's going to need to be the right sort of ethical considerations and at times sort of legislation to help us steer through these. Now, want to hear more about what you're involved in.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the businesses that you're involved in now. So Exocule and Winely.
Mhm.
Now, I think Winely's had it's a bit of attention.
Mhm.
Not as much for Exocule. So maybe you can sort of share a little bit about what's going on there.
Yeah, so Exocule is actually the parent company of Winely.
Yep.
And how that came about was I'd been working as an advisor to the founders, Jake and Abby, for about 6 months, and really inspired by them as entrepreneurs and visionaries and just super smart people and very low egos. They just want to win and they just want to get their vision done, and they'll do it any way they can and listen to people. And it was I really loved the Winely product, as we refer to it now, and I understood the problem space they're solving. And I know that when we first started out in technology, it was like, how many problems can we solve at once? And that didn't work. And so we learned in technology that you must find your niche and you must find the problem you're solving and know exactly who you're solving it for and why. So when they were very clear about Winely and what it did, I was like, fabulous. I love it. How can I help? And then as we got further into it, it took me several months, I think, for Jake to be very clear on his mission. And it just blew my mind how big it was and audacious and awesome. And I was like, how did we get so long to this point for me to understand where you're taking us? And he was like, oh, yeah, sometimes maybe I don't explain myself fully, but I know where I'm going.
Yeah.
So this is why we set up Exocule, to stop the confusion. So we're a biotechnology company, and our mission is to address food security globally and to address responsible production and responsible consumption. It's two of the big United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And you're like, okay, wow, that's really different to Winely. What on earth are you saying to
and
me?
maybe for those who don't really know about Winely, you want to sort of just roll back and explain Winely.
Yeah, so Winely addressed a big problem point for the winemaker. So lots of technology is going into the orchards and into the fields. So we've got drones, we've got soil testing going on, awesome stuff, hugely competitive market. What Jake and Abby saw, they wanted to get into fermentation, and we can talk about why, but they looked at the winemaker and started just talking to them. And they interviewed over 300 winemakers to get to their problem space. They're amazing researchers. And so it is the fermentation process. So grapes come in, juice, they go in these massive 90,000 litre tanks, and we call them bioreactors. There's yeast put in, there's a chemical reaction. I'm learning all this in the last sort of 12 months now. And basically we learn it's a hugely volatile environment. So much can go wrong in a very short amount of time, and tens of thousands of dollars can be lost. Or to save the wine, they're throwing in additives. They're also having to go up on these really high catwalks. It's very dangerous. Some people have died doing all the sampling. And their problem was...
Could be other reasons for dying sampling wine, but just, throwing that out, especially, and I have, been in some of those environments.
So basically they've got these, it runs over, the ferment is like 7 days, and it is going wild and crazy, and they work like demons 24 hours. They're sampling, but all they can sample is probably twice a day, because that's all the staff they have for, because they've got hundreds, if not thousands, of these tanks going at a time. I had no idea how big this industry was. It is massive. One customer alone has 62,000 tanks. So anyway, they're trying to sample and get the data and trying to catch it before the ferment goes bad. So what we have done is created these IoT sensors in hardware that go in each tank. So instead of the samples going off to the lab and coming back and making a decision on it twice a day, ours just sits there and it samples it every minute. And we send the data back as packages every 15 minutes. So you've got it on a dashboard, and you can watch all your thousands of tanks on your computer or on your phone, and we're just sending data back to the winemaker to to help them with their very fast volatile fermentation process. So we're actually gathering billions, we could be close to trillions of data points now, which is huge for machine learning. It's one of the most important factors.
And what does the customer base look like for Winely? Because it's not just New Zealand market, right?
No, so actually this was our first commercial. We call it a vintage. So in agriculture technology, you go with the seasons, clearly. And so in the Southern Hemisphere, we have a vintage season, which is usually around our summer. Makes sense, February, March. In the Northern Hemisphere, it's August, September, October. So we get 2 shots at it a year. And so this was our first commercial year, and we had customers in Australia and New Zealand doing pilots with us, which were, it was just an awesome experience. We've already iterated the product, getting it ready to go into California, and we've just made a decision that we're also going into France this year. We saw a great opportunity to go in. We have some great potential customers, and we've got a great, fantastic head of customer success that grew up on a vineyard in France, native. He knows the region, and we took a deep breath as a New Zealand company. We just went, we're going in. So it's really exciting. So we're about to go in August there.
That's great. Excellent. Right, sorry, back onto Exocule.
Backing up to the big mission. So basically, there's a big problem in the world, and we love addressing problems in technology, or you should love addressing problems. When we talk about food sustainability and how we use this planet, there is a problem with the way we basically rape, pillage, and harvest our land. And it's not sustainable, and it's known that it's not sustainable. We have 7 billion people on the planet so far, and if you look at even just how we farm livestock on the planet, livestock take up 28% of the Earth's surface. That's livestock farming to feed humans.
That's a mind-blowing figure.
That's a mind-blowing figure. Mind-blowing.
Wow.
So I'm not, and I'm not coming at this from a radical vegan perspective. I eat meat, I have a lifestyle block, I farm my own sheep, cows, it is more about how do we actually sustainably live on this earth and make it work for us as humans. So you've got 28% of the earth being farmed for livestock, and it's delivering 1% of human consumption of protein. And so that doesn't work, right? When you break down all our food groups, there's only 3 things we consume. So it's fats, carbohydrates, and protein. That's what we eat, and that's how we survive. A major part is protein. We need our protein as humans. So how do we get that protein? If already we're farming 28%, but only managed to deliver 1%, we're getting it from other areas of product that comes out of the earth, and that's how we're managing to do it. But by 2050, we're going to be at 10 billion people. How are we going to do this? How do we actually feed ourselves? And so this whole new industry is emerging, and it is called alternative protein. And it's about cultured meat. Like it's meat from cells, and it's not just like, oh, it's a nut, made into cheese that doesn't stretch or
Peas made into chicken. And
yeah.
on, which is pretty innovative.
It's pretty cool
itself,
anyway.
right?
I do like it. But it's like, how do we do this at scale? So at the moment, we've got all these amazing companies. They're doing, there's one called Eden Brews out of Australia. They're doing cowless milk. What did they call it? They had a great name for it anyway. But it's not just like nut milk. It is, how does it feel in your mouth, and how do you cook with it, and all that kind of thing. And so anyway, they're in R&D facilities, as are many other companies. They're trying to make this at scale because currently they're in maybe 10,000 litre vats and it's working and it's going great. But then how do you move that into 100,000 litre vats and more, and plenty of them? And it's fermentation, and they all use fermentation to deliver these alternative proteins. So think about meatless meat, woodless wood, cowless milk. Vaccines are made this way, pharmaceuticals are made this way, all through bioreactors, which are tanks, and through the fermentation process. So we look at it as we're an infrastructure play. So we're there to be the data intelligence for precision fermentation to enable them to control their fermentation process. So if we decided, and that's always been Jake's big vision, that's what he wanted to do. But he understood that if we went side by side with these alternative protein companies, we could only go as fast as each other. And currently they're in the R&D phase, and they don't think that they'll be at the commercial phase where instead of a portion of protein costing $10,000, we need to get it to a portion of protein costing $2.50 for the consumer. How do we get it there? Well, it's not by working side by side with them, because machine learning requires a lot of data. So that was where the penny dropped for them. They were like, wine industry, the oldest fermentation process in the world, hugely complex with massive problems of their own. So it's not like, oh, we'll just use them to get their data. It's like, let's solve this for them. And if we can solve it for them, we can supercharge that industry over there and actually give them like a speed on-ramp and maybe reduce the time to mass manufacturing of these alternative proteins by 10, 20 years. So for us, that's really exciting. And for me, that's my big why as to why I'm with the company. I want to know that potentially I've added something to the world with my work.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I realize we're running out of time, so we may have to find another episode to delve in and chat to you about some other topics. What's happening with the NZ High Tech Awards, and your role there, judging in the most innovative software category, which Duncan Cotterill sponsor. And you're also involved in an NFT startup as well. So
A side hustle is what I call it.
What is that entity?
Yeah, so it's actually again about how I feel about this new technology, and I got really interested in it because I started painting. And I taught myself how to watercolor paint, I think last year, and I was really getting into it. And people were like, you should put it up as an NFT. And I was like, what are you talking about? So it was actually just through my curiosity, and I was looking at NFTs, confused like everybody currently is, and just going, what is the point of this? And what do people do with it? And all these questions. And when I started learning and understanding what it was just more, it became my interest of like, I actually know how to make this work. And so I'm just working on a side hustle with some other engineers to build. Again, I always believe in like the infrastructure play, like how do we build the tools to bring this technology to mass consumers? So that's kind of what we're working on at the moment, and it's super fun, and it's I just really enjoy the creative process, and I live to work, and I say to people I'm never going to retire because I'm having too much fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. We'll look forward to maybe delving into that in future. Big thank you for coming on the show. Now, where do people track you down? Is it LinkedIn, or what's the best way to connect?
Yeah, I'm mostly active on LinkedIn. That's my platform I enjoy. I do enjoy it. So I am on Instagram, but not really. So
Yep. And look, big thank you to our show partners, 2 Degrees, Vodafone, Spark, HP, Gorilla Technology, Cyclone, and Aruba for their support of the New Zealand Tech podcast, and also New Zealand's broader tech and innovation communities. So thanks to them, and thank you, Shona Grundy, for joining New Zealand Tech podcast today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. That was really fun.
Yeah, it was great.
It
Cheers.
was great.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.